I wonder if the CIA has studied xenoglossia, speaking in tongues, foreign tongues. But this xenoglossia, well, glossolalia is speaking in tongues, but xenoglossia is speaking in foreign tongues. So I wonder if CIA has studied it. And like, I once, I don't know if it was the weed was laced with anything, but after I smoked some, like about 10 years ago, it felt like I had a trip. And then after like 10 hours, when I came back, like the reality was different. Or it could also be after smoking so much weed, Timothy Leary's 10th circuit was activated, or whatever his theory is, his theory of circuits. So like highest, like something happened, and it couldn't have been laced because I didn't see any like visuals or anything like fractals or anything. But the point being that, and I was at Arco, and I think it was it the Vietnamese? Yeah, I think it was the Vietnamese radio station in my radio, car radio, and I felt like I could understand them, even though I spoke not a word of Vietnamese. But I felt like, and it was an understanding in the sense of understanding a foreign language by figuring out, like deciphering a Rosetta Stone. But it felt like you could understand, just like I guess, you know how the babies in the primordial consciousness in the primal state they can actually, how do they actually learn the language? I mean, what's the primal consciousness like, the oceanic feeling, where you don't have any language and it's almost like not catatonic but not schizophrenic, but that's the egoless state, right? And you have no program, your blank state apparently. For the most part, I mean, no baby comes out. I think the tabula rasa uh, um, uh, theory is right. John Locke, the blank slate, we're born with a blank mind. For the most part, I mean, because a baby doesn't come speaking like it. So, anyways, so it views almost like you're on a in a globe, or like there's the shield and you're in a space. It's almost like you land in a, like if they were to simulate the space outer, just like Star Trek movie or whatever, like you're in an astronaut's costume and you descend and you view the world behind a fish tank, or the world as a fish tank, and there's the separation, or probably there is no separation. I mean, just like the caveman, I mean, before language was developed, or any communication skills, or any ego, or any thought perception, the thoughtless state before you were born, or before, I mean, the Neanderthals, when Neanderthals roamed, or the earliest men, whoever the earliest men are. What is the order? Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, we're Homo sapiens, and the Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Cro-Magnon is what? Anyway, so the oceanic feeling. So you also get that on psychedelics, I suppose, or even when you're drunk or something. Every time the ego dissolves. So if in the cases of schizophrenic people, it just, there's lack of control, I guess, like where there is no boundary, but you feel like it's taking overwhelming you, like seeping into your consciousness, your personal sphere, or like whatever. Laban space. You know, there's this concept of Laban space in theater and performance art. So that kind of gets distorted on Salvia. I know that. Like you feel the whole Laban space, that the front is the future, the back is past, and you have this weird, there's a synesthesiatic, this whole, your senses just become jumbled up and into this weird mesh, and then you almost like you can feel direction and taste direction, and that orientation. Basal ganglia, is that uh cause what controls? our orientation, sense of orientation, and there's a spatiotemporal lobe, right? So and then what's that called? Pro, not prophylactic, the tendency, not propagation, the pro, I forget, the tendency of, oh God, propatia. What is propatia? Now, anyways, I'm not thinking of that. I'm thinking of not prophylaxis. This whole tendency to move forward towards light, but that's towards light. That's also some amoebas and with flagella. These microcellular organisms probably have that, but that's yeah. Anyways, so yeah, our we have this, and that's the dissonance between all the shamans and people who do psychedelic and go to the world, and or even if you're holistic, intuitive, or you have this different sense of perception of this world than the people who are analytic and logical. And I mean, but then again, some people who are like very logical and skeptical, they take psychedelic, but they don't all of a sudden become holy man or like embrace God or Christ consciousness, or they do become that probably, but they don't follow some religion, I guess. So that makes sense because ultimately, I mean, you know how Nasruddin Hoja said, I'm the guy was agreeing with the counselor that yes, you're right, and then the other guy defended. He heard history and said yes, you're right, and the other guy objected from the audience. How could both be right? And then he said you're right. So yes, I guess in some plane, highest plane, the atheist, shaman, skeptic, everyone is right. The deist, the Islam, Muslim, Christian, is like the converging point, the pinnacle where the whole mandala of life, cosmic, cosmological symmetry of wild symmetry, and this whole Welsh Celtic uh, knotwork of life, and it just spins and spins out beautifully, I guess, in this whole grand cosmos, cosmic mandala, where and like fractals, where the reality, what if there is this exact moment, there's another reality which is the anti reality of this reality, and there's this exact guy with mic recording it, like my exact mirror image, but except everything is like the opposite spin or whatever you want to call it. Quaternion, quaternion, that has Hamiltonian rotor. These have these implications, I think, in virtual reality, 3D modeling. Dabbled briefly on that, the how to make virtual reality simulation. What if are we in a simulation? Because I just saw one of the videos, like the top 10 realistic simulation VR simulations out there. The Everest one is spooky, and there are some which are really spooky where you just, if you wear that helmet and someone didn't bring you back, you'd be stuck in that reality. And we have that kind of freakish technology right now, VR technology, like Oculus Rift even, like, and that's scary. So I guess we might be living in a matrix, and but how do we? I wonder what happens when you take DMT. Like, do you find out you actually get out of this reality? You just unplug them from the matrix, right? The veil, as they say, the veil comes off. But I wonder. But we are at this cusp of time and space. We have found the technology, and probably it has always been like that. The shamans knew it, Aztec shamans or flesh of the gods. What's that word called? Oleotl, not oleotl, like the flesh of the god. Oleotl, I don't know. It's a difficult word. That's a good word for spelling bee. Okay, kids, what is the word for spell oleotl or whatever? Flesh of the gods. So yeah, we always, not that right now, but it is more embraced and accepted that we have the reality to know what is the ultimate reality. Not that we have the reality, the mechanism and technology to find out, whether it be it psychedelics or even dark chamber, or psychedelic is the fastest, or even yoga, some form of yoga like Wim Hof breathing, and but I guess especially psychedelics, like especially DMT, I guess we have the technology to find out what is the ultimate reality, what is outside of this space time. I guess you go to the spirit world, and so, or probably it always has been like that. And some people who are intuitive and psychic or whatever, like the Ajna chakra is activated, and or like shamans and the priests, or like if you're having visions from Catholic school, like, or any example of from William James's religious experiences, varieties of religious experiences. It's more common than one thing I found out when I was in college is like how common this whole animistic tribal belief system is. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, it's like in every culture they have this cosmological, whether we're studying archaeology or ceramic history or art history, it's like the Western world that we know of, that is actually in many ways the deviation, not the majority, but rather in many ways minority. I mean, yeah, 6 billion people, that's a majority, but majority of the world had that sort of weird beliefs, and that's understandable from anthropological perspective. Back in the days, if the volcano went off, I was about to say Agnigiri, but and the lava and you thought it was gods, the thunder, it was a god of thunder. But now the question is whether it was intuitive or whether it was when they say the need of God. I mean, they were also doing a whole bunch of psychedelics, so I mean, it's obvious, like, and they had oceanic feeling, and the ego was less developed than we have now. I guess the frontal cortex was less developed, neocortex. I mean, it only makes sense, I guess, that there is some outside external force, and it has been validated by entheogens. Un, un, but still, some people who would like refuse to believe that, they still stick on to this materialistic belief. But I think there's still more of a shift, even though the gatekeepers and the veil, the real veil by media and the books and the mainstream media, they don't want you to know about it, I guess. Or even academia. Academia acts also as a gatekeeper by encouraging people to be skeptical and critical, but at the sense, they don't. It's like just like Buddha said, be skeptical and critical of everything, even of myself. But academia, I mean, doesn't have that. Only way, if you were to challenge it, then people will say, "Why the fuck? What the fuck are you doing here?" So you basically don't do not attend it because, and they're right. I mean, if you think that the need, for the craving for that approval of that authority, why are you here then? If you don't consider that authority, and ultimately, academia is now no longer dissemination of knowledge, but more like grooming people to find a job in the real world, quote unquote. So that integrity is compromised, has been compromised a long time ago. It's not like the chief goal is to transfer knowledge either through oration or scribing or whatever. Boustrophédon. Phoenicia, Phoenicians had the script, Boustrophédon script, right? That can be left both same backwards and forwards. I guess palindromes are also a form of Boustrophédon, except not in terms of script, but in terms of, well, that's what they're called, palindromes, not Boustrophédon, because they sound the same backwards and forwards. They can be read same backwards and forwards. Why do you think of Boustrophédon? I don't know. And that's another thing of consciousness. We can only think in one channel. If you had compound eye, if our head was this giant compound eye, and we could channel like reality all at the same time, like an alien, like tap into all realities at the same time, like Indra's nest, or like hypernode of a node of an Indra's nest, like the pearl that reflects both the macrocosm and the microcosm. And I guess that's what the hypothetical model of a God consciousness would be, like someone who can access all, and we simply humans simply do not have are not privy to that access unless you get blown off with psychedelics or some really spiritual like experience and consciousness, like where you can they say perceive everything, or NDE, near death experience, where they can perceive everything at once. And that's fascinating how they, like, there's so many accounts of that that shows how powerful we are, and just we are in the you're here on this world. I wonder if that statement is true, that we choose our parents and our soul makes this contract. I mean, but I guess the beautiful part of life is that you get to question it. Nothing is written in stone, everything in water. Because I mean, who knows if that is true? That's my viewpoint of philosophy. Even if it's new age woo, which I have more proclivity towards, I still, I mean, that's just a belief. That's just one axiom. That's just one thought, opinion. There are no opinions. Like, I think in secret, Neil Donald Walsh was right. Like in the universe, there's no blackboard that says your life. This is what it's supposed to be. It's basically fill in the blank. And there is the grand tabula rasa where we can fill in with a wax clay tablet. So with the stylus, we can write whatever we want to etch. And I guess there is a scare, and Alan Watts would say, like, what if the black might win? The white, and we desperately want white to win. We act in that, we write the script, the program of cosmic consciousness signature. But in trying to enforce our goodness on the world and preach our goodness, we become so evil that rewrites the program. And that's why we have, as a society, I mean, think about it, even with COVID-19, if the whole world came to an end, how would you grade the humanity? We're cutting down trees, deforestation, pollution. We're unkind to people. There's hunger, poverty, famine, war, terrorism, corruption. I mean, it's cesspool. It's sickness. It's death. It's why cancer. Why even bother go on living? And I don't mean it in a suicidal way, but the point: if someone, when an alien were to visit, and yes, there's some beauty out there too, but it's obviously it's not perfect. Or maybe is it though? Is it? Probably it is perfect. We just don't. Probably media focuses on the wrong place, and people are just. But as a general hive mind consciousness, noetic consciousness, global consciousness, omega consciousness, until like till omega point. This not omega point. This says a singularity. This whole, if not Gaia, this if this whole world had were to be one consciousness, of humanity, it's that of anxiety, is that of depression and anger, and we still have lower consciousness imprints in our signature imprints in our psyche, that we're not perfect, but we're also not we're not perfect. Obviously we're not we're imperfect, but I mean, basically it's not as if we're getting A or B. We're probably getting D or something right now, seriously. Or C. Even C is not passing. Well, C is passing, but C it's, and that's a failure as humanity, that even we have with the things like it has so much better than the past. And it might sound cynical, but yeah, but in 2000 years we still haven't eradicated war and poverty and all this thing, and there's this corruption, this some, well, like 1% control the whole 99% of the global wealth and that kind of thing. And there is this government, they don't want good for you. When was the last time they did something really benevolent? They have this Puritan strict mentality, which is probably a residual of religious bias they have, where everything is like you must suffer in life. Like, imagine how they treat the addicts. Like, oh, it's your fault, and like we claim to be progressive and liberal, but nowhere as liberal as the other countries like Portugal or like other European countries. I think which one was it, Denmark or some other countries, Switzerland, Sweden, I don't know, where you're allowed to have your heroin intake. And but that's but but in US, I mean, it's more like we have this punitive mentality, whether it be prison or like, and look at how many laws we have. When I went to Canada, I was going to this creek and this park, and I mean, I was thinking, if it was US, probably there would be like 10,000 fucking like warning signs posted all over the plaster all over the place that don't do this, you must stay within 3 feet distance, the air this civic code. I'm sure Canada has those municipal codes, but it's not like there is no paranoia, this fear driven, whether it be media or government officials. It's like they're less police statey than us. That's what I'm trying to say. In some country, and then there are countries like China which are like more intrusive and police statey, and obviously America is, we're still borderlining on Snowden, post Snowden or circa Snowden, um, Orwellian world. But that's not my qualm. I mean, this totalitarianism, as much as government is not benevolent. I mean, whether it be diet, they fucked up the food pyramid a long time ago. We have a totally outdated model on drugs, and then we have Bill Maher who's like champions like and say religion is bad and drugs are good. But just read the comment section. I mean, and this is not by no means bashing the right, people on the right, but even even the most democrat, I mean, the most liberal democratic uh, cabinet under a democratic president is still very. And I understand there's you have to maintain, and that's the pretense we are with the mask we're wearing, the COVID-19 exposing. We have this, we maintain, we have this pretension of formality, like whether it be traveling a bus or airport or outside the police, like we have this formal, we project this formal look, whereas inside deep down we're so imperfect, whether it be in our speech and our talks and our thoughts and our the diet or whatever, but we project this formal front page demeanor veneer personality outside, and the hypocrisy lies. Okay, good, but you don't act up to that. Even though you're a cop or immigration officer or a firefighter or doctor, like don't doctors like backbite and slander over patients on their back? I've seen that firsthand in a hospital, and I cannot divulge much because of HIPAA. I just realized that the other day. But and even not that kind of hospital, regular hospital, like people are not perfect, and the problem begins when people who play by the rules, if they snap, because here I am, I'm perfectly parking my car, I'm doing this, and I still get life get shitted on me, and then there are those people who project this formal, this perfect, um, demeanor facade front, but in the back they don't follow it. I mean, if they could get away with it, they would get away with jaywalking or like littering or whatever. And when that not dichotomy, the hypocrisy, the double standard arises, that's when the corruption and sickness begins, the hypocrisy. If you flat out come and accept and said and admit you're a bastard and a scoundrel, that's fine. But when people pretend to be nice and deep down, that's where the problem lies. And that's the state of world we're in right now. COVID-19 would expose. I mean, it might be Schadenfreude from my point, like told you so, like humanity is heading from and I like how the evangelicals are trying to justify it in their way, the new age gurus, the yoga mat people, they're trying to justify it their way, the positive psychology people are trying to justify it their way, the people who are atheistic or skeptical, like they're trying to justify it their way, like it's bullshit, this. And maybe all of them combine, like form this coherent picture where probably we are going through a global shift, and then there are those ascension type of people trying to justify it in the way that we're going through a shift. And then if you follow Maya, like if you not follow Maya, if you could say Mayans were also right, it's almost near doomsday, Nostradamus and whatnot. And who knows, maybe the jigsaw puzzle actually does fit on some grand cosmic level from God's vantage point. Maybe everyone is right, and even the people who say it's these are just interpretations, even they're right. Who knows? Schrodinger's cat, the world, wave, particle continuum. This whole world could be just some wave. It's not as material, just as we think we this is. It's almost like a holographic principle of Talbot, Michael Talbot, or Pribram, is that Pribram? I don't know. David Pribram, I think, who did all this research, who basically constructed the holographic model of the universe. And Um, Pregram, David Pregram, I forgot. So basically, what I was trying to say is this whole world could be just made of light, and light has no existence. Basically, it's like if you think, imagine a hologram. Imagine everything in your front of you was made of light, and you touch it, and it's nothing is there, and it's very nihilistic, and then form is emptiness, emptiness forms type of thing of the Buddhists or like that's what people who have extreme psychedelic experience, whether Stanislav Grof or some other random dude like or Terrence McKenna, they talk about doing it so much where they're just grateful there's some existence in the world and there's not nothing like nothing not that nothing but no thing like not even no thing like no conception I guess that there's some conception existence instead of no conception existence which is and that's why they come back with gratitude for life. But you don't need a kick in the pants in the seat of your pants to like feel that. I mean, now I am like I realize how so much freedom I had before, and we as collective consciousness, and we miss that. We miss the freedom, ultimate freedom we have now. I mean, imagine if this was still over in like 12 months or a year or two. What are the odds you would actually go out in public transit or Uber or the life would actually return to normalcy? So we're fucked. We fucked it up, humanity. So, but that was a good point though. That if we were to give a grade to this whole our humanity, it wouldn't be a passing A. And the thing is, we justify it by saying, but it can never be A. But why not? At one hand, we have one our intention on the brake and the one on the accelerator. We want the world to be as it is, but at the same time, we're in denial that it can be perfect as it is. Like, and the reason we have the dissonance is because 7 billion people or each ones have their own unique axiomatic epistemological groundwork like rule of axioms in life. If you're born and if you're the first thing you see is your mom getting shot in the head by some goon and a thug, then obviously your first axiom would be what a hostile universe we live in. And if you're born and I don't know if you're and that you can be pampered and still be fucked up, but or if you just had a relatively boring normal even existence, then you think okay this life is good, but but that's not the point. The point being, and it becomes increasingly complex. Like if you had billion experiences, that's like billion opinions, axiomatic axioms in your head. Like you know how we have ZFC, we have rules of axioms for fixed for like or like just add the rules for chess. Imagine every people on the earth had their own chessboard and they came up with their own rules how chess should be played, and that's ultimately what we're doing. We're trying to play chess with each other, but I have my own rules of on playing chess. There's no universal rule, and then there's the people who claim there is a universal rule, like the religion or authority or whatever. And when one group tries to enforce it on other, and that's how the dissonance begins. Let live. We don't live and let live, and then you go to YouTube, you see all these videos that bash on formal education, indoctrination, inculcation. We can perfectly live without it. We can perfectly live without our 9 to 5 fucking shitty jobs. Even though some people are struggling right now, but I mean, what's the point of people bitch about it, but they make no changes, and we're being forced to make changes right now? What's the point of bitching about it if you won't do anything about it? You're just like an addict, and we're addicted to that whole this what do you call that, this treadmill of life, this rat race, and we justify it and say okay nothing can be done until it breaks down. It's forced, someone puts a wrench in the wheel, and then you're forced to take a look at it that oh maybe we could have done things differently. And then there is this another state of mind, Advaita, where you realize the world is perfect as it is, because I'm focusing more on the negative aspects. But it is sometimes we have this cynicism gets a bad rap, but why wouldn't it be cynical? I mean, we have currency. We are utterly greedy and materialistic. We have enough for everyone, but not all people gets a fair share of the slice of the pie, right? They're the marginalized people who are either be physically, mentally disabled, who are deformed. We marginalize them, and we go on living our life that's how it should be. That's the norm. That uh, that's the norm. That some people do deserve to be the elite, greedy people. The capitalist deserve to control, have possess all the wealth where people die in Africa. And we think that's normal. Maybe in 2,000 years, this would be considered like a sickness and real. We'll look at it back and say, how could people be so savage by looking at our society? Like just like we view slavery and like apartheid in South Africa, and it was all normalized. The inherent normalization. So the normalization of this normalized culture is what caused our downfall, I guess. And what can you do? I mean, the whole healthcare system is broken. Pharmaceuticals are corrupt. You know, and I still so and in times in times like those, it questions the Advaita belief that is the world really perfect? Is some people have this amazing ayahuasca experience and they realize the world has been perfect as it all along. But what if you don't have those kind of chemical metamorphosis, alchemy in your brain? I think chemistry and our neurochemistry determines a lot about the world we perceive. If you're dopamine up, serotonin up, anandamide up, you'll feel bad. You'll feel like a total man, and you'll perceive the world in a different way. The moment if the cortisol is high, or you're hungry or bitter, you'll view the world in a more cynical way. And then there are state like right now I am in, where I'm in balance. I'm not more dopamine up, and I'm also not very cortisol up or like adrenaline up. Like I'm just okay right now. It's like more normal, and you view the world in that from that lens. So, and then there's this another rat race treadmill of trying to this dopamine addiction, this proclivity that we should always be good, like happy, 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 or if not peace, peace, peace. Like we don't embrace the suck of the shitty experiences, and that misfires, backfires sometimes. No one can be unless you reach those Satchitananda type of bliss where your Kundalini arises and you're awakened and you stay in that state permanently. Unless you're Neem Karoli Baba or like Yogananda or Vivekananda or whoever, Ramana Maharishi or even Alan Watts or Terence McKenna or Ram Dass. I think these people really reach that exalted state where nothing can really bother them. Some people haven't, but they they have this project this image of being gurus, and some really makes me question. I mean, but then I also have this bias where I think like real if you were really enlightened, you wouldn't be teaching like Toli, Muji, Spira, and who else? Those people. I have nothing against those people, but you can always find some contradictions in them. I'm not saying getting spotlight is bad or like they're trying to help people, but they'll say if you point this out, they'll say, most things they preach is like change yourself and change the world. So why the fuck don't you go back in a cave and meditate and change the world then? Why do you have to come and preach to us? That's why Lao Tzu would say, "Those who speak do not know, no. Those who know do not speak," and mea culpa. And I'm not And maybe that's what they're doing there, what I'm doing. They're just expressing themselves. They're not probably trying to convert, proselytize, or preach. Sometimes being existence is can be a trap of ego. Like, I mean, there's nothing you can do. It's like swallowing an iron ball. Like like everything you do, even if you don't do anything, if you do and not do, wu wei or non wei, inaction in action, action, non action, nothing. Like basically just the simple act of existing, you're trapped. And I think I guess the concept of original sin, like maybe a baby can be born and do it like doesn't necessarily have to attract bad things and instigate trigger law of attraction. It could be all because of some karmic residual imprint. It could be just the mere act of existence is the fact that life is not gonna be heavenly, that something's not gonna get fucked up sometimes in the future. You cannot lead a perfect life. That's what I'm trying to say. Like we talk a perfect game, perfect play in chess. You cannot do that in life. I guess just by the virtue of life. I don't think anyone in the world from birth, from A to Z, like from birth to death, lived a perfect life. And I mean, that's obvious, but that's obvious. We said that no one is perfect, but we want it to be like that. We want like everything to be like you know ace in tennis, like double ace or whatever. Like what do we call that? Ace. I guess the more we embrace our insecurities, imperfections, and acceptance, and I resisted towards that for a long time because we want life to be a certain way and how we should be doing this, but there is no way, as Bruce Lee would say in Jeet Kune Do's book, that best way is no way, best technique is no technique. Wu Wei, the empty form, like empty technique, no technique, sort of, no school of no sword, and like those. But if you try to live that way, we think the spontaneity means like whim, that itself is a trap again. So what to do? You're in a bind. Marcosi. I don't know why I'm using chess terminology. I don't even know how to say that word, Marcosi. But I don't even know what that kind of bind is. Bind is a good thing to study in chess. Binds was a good tactical. There's so many ways to play chess, like overloading, like to like focus on chess, like strengthening it. You can be an expert on just one technique, like windmill, or force yourself so the game ends in a windmill all the time, or queen trap, or zugs, like X-ray, or like score or whatever, or X-ray and overloading is like a good tactic, and queen trap, and but even opposition, like those are like higher tactics. You can be an expert on just on that simple tactic alone, like take a queen and they put a pawn on board and one has to promote another and the queen has to prevent it, and that itself can be just a game of chess. Like harking back to the notion, what if we all created our own chess boards and our own chess rules? And that's essentially what we're doing. Just we're There's some overlaps, no doubt, but we have their own axioms and belief system consisting of such and such rules. And psychedelic sometimes dissolves that and makes you question those biases and proclivities and epistemological biases, and makes us come to see our blind spots. And by definition, any system that has closed system, I guess not by definition, but is gonna have, like, if you were to generalize Gödel's incompleteness theorem into like real life, like which seeps into every system, whether it be okay. What if you were to take some simple things like What I mean by blind spot, if you were to, okay, suppose we had no rules in the world, and I came up with the rule, the golden rule: be nice to, like, do unto others what you would do unto, what you do unto others, what you want them to unto you, right? Like, it's kind of like that. This statement is false. That problem, Russell's paradox and everything's, you know, you can't even say something good, neither bad. Like, you cannot just say do unto others what you do unto them, because that statement has a lot of blind spots. It doesn't cover everything. For instance, what if you're a psychopath and you want others to be unkind to you? Then would that does that mean you are going to be unkind to others? So that does, obviously that doesn't hold true. Even though the meaning is such that be nice to people, right? So anything, any sentence you write down, that is falsifiable. Even this, even the one that I just uttered just now. So you cannot write down anything with certainty. Even that. And another one is absolute versus relative. Is everything absolute? Well, depends. Is that statement true? I mean, so you see, and the problem with this is because of language and our programs and our the way humans communicate and write. We our communication symbols and script, and that's just this. We're in this. We literally imagine a mime who, like, holds this hands up, palms facing you, and tries to make this as if he's trapped in a bubble, and the bubble is made up of the programs are with made up of strings of characters, of letters and everything. We trap ourselves with all this, and that's the ego basically. Now, what would happen if that gets dissolved all the time? Can we live in a world where the ego doesn't exist? In order to live harmoniously, the other people's ego must also be dissolved, or else it's not a fair game. People would fucking abuse you, and you cannot just be loving kindness of Christ. Sometimes it's gonna weigh you down unless you really, really reach that state where you have, where your whole heart is full of light and everything. But why then live? Why then live? Maybe to cure, to heal the world. But then you'll say, then you can argue. A skeptic might argue, but why heal it? Like, they say in Buddhism, one is the Mahayana and the Theravada or whatever. Like, one people wanted to come back and help humanity, and other people went over the wall or whatever, the portal. So ultimately, nothing matters, right? These are all meaningless, I guess. And no matter if you study philosophy, logic, mathematics, you come to that impasse, like stalemate, where not stalemate, this cul-de-sac where you realize, suppose you were, or even if you were to read just dictionary of life, of the just the legal library of rules of the world, of the cosmos, you realize that this system looks just like even logic. It gives an appearance of being airtight, but it is still very fragile, and because it has all, any system must have blind spot. You cannot create a perfect system, no matter how many rules. The more rules you create, and that's why Alan Watts would say the Chinese idea of wisdom and justice is different than the ones who just wants to, like, judge people, and we have this other punitive mentality in America, obviously. I mean, and it's all money. What's the point of giving parking tickets and street sweeping and whatnot? Is to just to generate revenue, and that's okay. But don't come to me and pretend the only reason you want me to wear my seatbelt is because you're concerned about my safety. For your safety and concern, where we use monitor with radar. That's fucking bullshit. Fuck you. And it's blatant in your face. People are being using double speak. They don't fucking give a shit about you. Everyone, we're all out there to protect ourselves. Do you think if they're concerned about safety, they'll put dip or fucking speed breaker in the road, so that when you're going 40 and 80 and a uh 25-mile lane, and all of a sudden there's a fucking dip and you crash onto it, is your because of your own fucking safety? Fuck you. And that has been exposed now. The mask has come off, you know, and it's everywhere. That's just one little detail about how our society functions, and it's everywhere. Catch 22, like tow your car. You need your license. I mean, your registration and license to prove that that's your car. But it's in your fucking car in your dashboard, and the only way you can get it out is if you had to carry a extra one in your pocket. How do you get a job? You need a house. You need some shelter. How would you get shelter and house and food? If you had like a basic foundation, you wouldn't have a job. It's all fucking catch 22 in America, and the reason being because of all these rules and the structure, what which thing you think is helping us, as opposed to the lawlessness, anarchy, the where of India, where they didn't have any any structure in the system in the street. It's like maybe there is some hidden beauty and poetic sublime structure in that maelstrom and mayhem, man, where the even some people, I don't understand why West foreigners get complain about the sound, the honking and everything. To me, that's natural because I grew up with it. But I guess if you all your life you have lived in a peaceful state of environment where slightest noise bothers you in the library, some people actually fucking complain just if you're flipping pages. Apparently, that disturbs them. Or even if you, I know, okay, I understand the talking part, but you can be doing this, you can be doing this for a long time, flipping pages, and apparently some people couldn't concentrate. This is a snowflake generation we have become. And I guess that's by, suppose we're an island and we come up our own rules. Any rule we come up with, that's destined to have blind spot and that's destined to fail. Even if you come up with no rules, well, just like Beach by Leonardo DiCaprio, the movie, or Lord of the Flies, William Golding, I think. That you imagine that kind of, because ultimately that's what we are. This whole world is ultimately like the island, and we have the social contract theory and whatnot. But Rawlsian, I just keep saying Rawlsian social contract theory, even though I have never seen that book. I know about utilitarianism and Mill, but I never read his book. Well, I kind of read one of his books. It was boring. Not many people read all these books like Kant, Categorical Imperative, and all this. These are extremely dry, and even Darwin's Origin of Species is tolerable, and then there's Leakey and. But do you need to read every book letter by letter to get the gist of it? Imagine in the future where everyone could just had omniscience and like a microdot had contains all of world's information, the 7,000 volumes of Wikipedia, and it has been installed in your head. And just like Matrix, like you can learn anything basically: boxing, uh, knife fighting, weaving, basket weaving, parachute, paratrooping, whatever. What would you live for then? If you could master anything in a second, I mean, then obviously then you'll say because well there is this joy in the process of learning, but like ipso facto or res ipsa, like life itself is worth its meaning. But then another side of you will rear its ugly head and will say, if that is the case, then why even do mastery? Well, because they simply want to. It's almost like what I'm trying to say is even if you follow, try to be a master, that's okay. Even if you don't try to be a master in life, that's okay. Because ultimately, we tend to give this weight like someone who struggled for and they did clocked in 10,000 hours, and obviously if you can do some supernatural thing, then by all means. But at the end of the day, like we tend to give more weight to hard work and effort, even though you're not. And even though I respect and laud the fact that some Olympians like never will finish the race even though limping, and the father, and I love those kind of stories. But I mean, suppose there was this race for like 200 or 365 days, and all the people finished, and this is July, and you probably barely made like 10 miles. You're not gonna, what's the point of, that's another ego. that I must finish. A lot of Olympians actually have ego issues, narcissistic ego issues. So that's what even, rest in peace, Kobe Bryant, Jordan, and you have to be, if you're a high performing player, you have to have some. And I'm not, they say if you spit on the people on the top, it comes back to you. I'm not spitting on them, I'm not shitting on them, but you cannot. I should have the freedom to voice my opinion that when you reach that kind of level, it's you're so focused. And I have been to the state where I would take nootropic, and those are some mild ones, in the focus factor, and you're like, you become a machine. You lose all your compassion, your feelings and emotion. All you can think of is the goal in front of you. You become a rat, just trying to pull that lever for cocaine or whatever, and you become so hyper focused and laser focused. And society, we champion this kind of, and like, we champion those, and we call other people lazy if they're not accomplishing something or hustling and anything. What's the point of being laser focused and getting the goal, the goodie, if you're being an asshole to other people? And that's another egoic thing. Like, yeah, you're finishing the race, but that's also your ego that's saying, I must finish it, you know or probably it's because of my Taoist bias. And that's one of the most beautiful thing about Taoism is like, there is no ego, yet it gets everything done. Like, if I were Taoist were to read Britannica, he would just do it for the love of it. He wouldn't count. He wouldn't say there wouldn't be a competition. This diary keeping, like, fucking, and it could very well be. I mean, if you love it, but and the reason humanity do it was like we're trying to make everything a profession. Like, even nothing we do for the love, and we say it has to make money, and we normalize it. But and then we question the people, like, oh, maybe you're not a good author because you don't write for the love of writing. And if you, even if you do write for the love of writing and make no money, we even question that. It's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Even Olympians or people who do all these extraordinary things, or Perelman is a different, a guy who kind of solved the Paulia's not Paulia, fucking Poincare conjecture. That guy, probably he really did it for love. I mean, that mad respect to him. He declined the $1 million and everything, and that guy's a recluse too, and like a freaking. But some people do. On the other hand, I don't think Wiles did it for love. He probably did it for fame and prestige. So it's kind of like the whole four color conjecture thing. Yeah, you solved it, but then at the end it becomes meaningless, because if it takes 4,000 pages to read it, the fourth, the automated proof of four color theorem. What's the point? It loses all its meaning if it takes like 8,000 pages just to come up with a proof. That proof has no validity or merit, I guess. Not validity, merit. Same with I mean, what I'm trying to say is, everything we do it for selfish reason. There is no pure altruistic, you know. But the only way you can attain real mastery is by letting go of that effort, and just but we don't champion those kind of people, and because we think that in order to survive and make money, we have to prostitutize our love for the craft. And probably it's not even possible in the beginning. Like Rubik's cube, I don't like, I particularly don't enjoy solving Rubik's cube, and I don't know how to solve Rubik's cube. I can follow the algorithms and solve it, but probably that's why I'm not good at it, because I don't really like it. And but the only way to do it is to do the things even though you don't like it. But then it still gets more trickier, because like exercise, I like running now because I feel the benefits. But and I had to cross over the threshold to appreciate the benefits of runner's high. But um the reason why I like running, even though I hate running, not I hate running, I dislike running, is because I like that I dislike running, and I like the fact that I what I get out of this disliked stressor is beneficial. I mean, it's like I like not liking it because you know what I'm saying. Like, don't do things if you dislike something. I mean, okay, never mind. Like, you can like horse riding, but you can also hate the fact you have to learn a lot about it to be an expert in horsemanship. But you like the fact that you'll have to do things that you don't like. That's okay. But if you're just doing it solely out of ego, that, oh, shut up, I must do this no matter what, and that is not pure in my mind, and it's bound to fail 99 out of 100 times. And there are those one exception, but then you become depressed, and like you need therapy for the rest of your life because you for like Mill, Paul. I don't know about Polgar sisters, but Sidus, Mill, Mozart. I think Mozart, not Mozart. Mozart probably. Some people they complain like the way they're how the helicopter parents, especially in spelling bees and whatnot. I wonder how many children grows up to become fucked up because their parents were become so control freak and they force themselves. And yes, the good thing is probably they now know all the words, but the bad thing is they fucking fuck them up. So I mean, it's choose your poison, or like which you how you wanna view it as half empty or half full. And inherently, that humanity does it out of fear that if you don't somehow control a child right from the get go, is gonna fucking run to the street and get crushed by a fucking disposal truck or whatnot. But that's out of fear. And so we justify that there is no perfection, the perfect parenting or perfect, and then it ratchets up more shit of the same kind. That's the Buddhist monks who are celibates and don't raise family. Probably they have something to it. You can question like why Buddhist monks like they're disengaged from the life. It's because they don't want to fuck people up even more, just muddy the water even more. They're like the fuck we had enough of it. I actually lived in for 9 days, like a week actually. I forget in Green Gulch in San Francisco. It was fun. It was fun, but and I realized the problem was actually not the problem that you don't need to go to a monastery to find peace in heart. You can just like even hypnosis. People think you have to get in a relaxed state to be suggestible. You can be suggestible without being relaxed. Like you don't know. Sometimes in the most stressful times in the bus, I felt like the ego died, and then I felt the pocket of peace where I just felt completely, and there was icky and like it was dirty. It was public transport. People were smelly, and then sometimes the bus would stop for at a stand, and I would hear the sound of the AC, and then you'd get into this zen space, even though the whole thing, the outside was like not how I want it to be, like perfect, this peaceful, this by a beautiful lake, monk zen state. So and that's the problem to reaching those zen state, because you don't know when it's gonna hit you. And the more you try to, you cannot, people do this, and this is no way a diss on Steven Kotler and Jamie Will, who, but you know what they're actually what they're trying to do is they're trying to commercialize flow. You cannot force the flow. No, you just cannot. And even if you go to the flow, you can utilize it, because the whole concept of flow is you don't have any desires. So, okay, fine. I still doubt how Navy SEALs could use that, sensory deprivation to accelerate learning the foreign language and whatnot. Because in that state, you go off the worldly attachment. So, if anything you do is just sort of pure torture, because you're forcing yourself in that pure state to do some earthly thing. Probably that's why you get fucked up even more. Yeah, we hear about Stephen Curry doing the deprivation tank every week and whatnot, but you cannot continue maintain it all the time. I mean, some people can, like Joe Rogan. You come back. I mean, you integrate it into daily life, but it's kind of like saying, it's like washing. The Rami Malek joke. It's like going to a mosque on Friday night is just washing the car before a storm. I mean, yeah. But the thing I was trying to say is that you cannot force a flow state. You cannot commercialize it. You can induce it at will. It the whole Because the whole concept of flow, getting the flow state is it's effortless. It's trying, and yeah, you can set up states, but still,